My Adventures with Superman was back again this week with a brand new episode entitled My Adventures with Mad Science. I'm Cape Joel, and this is a video series where I give my thoughts and feelings on the episode that was, while also shouting out any comic book Easter eggs or references I can find. So with that out of the way, let's jump into it, shall we? Alrighty then, picking up from where last week left off, Jimmy is still nowhere to be found, a fact of which is really distressing Lois and Clark both so much that they're willing to put their own hurt feelings on hold long enough to go looking for him in the woods. As we soon discover, Lois is actually quite adept at backwoods tracking after years of survival training at the hands of her military man father. Boy, you know, they're laying this inevitable twist on so strong, I wonder if they're actually gonna end up swerving us at the end. Together, the two end up stumbling upon a military research installation that managed to be invisible to even Superman from the air, meaning that whatever they're hiding in here must be pretty important, and the fact that it comes with its own red sun generator even further hits that point home as if it needed it. As we learn from Jimmy's Flamebird videos, this place is actually codenamed Area 52, a very fun reference to both the real-world Area 51, a place long associated with aliens visiting Earth, as well as DC Comics' recurring love for the number 52, be it 52 the series, 52 Earths, New 52, etc, etc. Now you might be wondering who exactly was that giant ape that grabbed Jimmy at the end of the last episode. As many fans noted, DC Comics is just lousy with evil super apes, so it really could have been any of them. Well, turns out it was none other than the Brain and Monsieur Mallah, a lovable, wacky couple of Euro mad science queens. Now, for those who don't know, in the comics, these two are actually Doom Patrol villains, but Adventures with Superman chooses to go in a very different direction, with them mainly choosing to not make them villains at all. And if you know their origins, how the Brain lost his body when the Doom Patrol's chief got jealous of his research and just blew him up, they sure don't sound like villains, they sure sound like victims, don't they? Furthermore, them very clearly being a couple and in love, you might think is a progressive new invention of the TV show, but no, these two have been a couple since the Grant Morrison era of Doom Patrol comics, and even that live-action Doom Patrol show had fun with the concept by making them an old married couple who retired to Florida. Jimmy ends up making friends with this odd couple right away because, as I stated before, Jimmy being able to make friends with anyone is basically just his superpower, and they're nothing but sympathetic to his plight and how he feels abandoned by his other two friends, forever a third wheel on their many adventures, a conspiracy-spouting joke shunned just for the way he is. A fact of which only becomes funnier and funnier when we realize that Jimmy has indeed been right about most of the crazy things he's been saying as Flamebird, and the longer he hangs out in Area 52, the more right his conspiracy theories become. But what is the real story with Area 52, you might be wondering? Turns out back in the day it was all part of Project Cadmus. Cadmus, comic fans will know, as another deep research outfit mostly interested in cloning, especially the cloning of Superman. In My Adventures with Superman, though, Cadmus is explained to be the kinder, gentler sister program to the much more brutal Task Force X. Both groups were working for the government on creating new inventions with the use of what is clearly alien tech, but one day Task Force X got jealous and decided to purge their competition off the map, with only the Brain and Mallah managing to survive by faking their deaths with the help of a dangerous black hole generator. One that they're still actually working on, as well as creating numerous different mutants. Hey, they might be good guys in this show, but they're still mad scientists, and mad scientists got a mad science. Ever since the destruction of Cadmus, the Brain and Mallah have vowed to live here in the installation in peace, afraid of what the outside world might think of them. And again, hey, hats off to the subtext on this one. If you know, you know. It's while stumbling around the facility, Lois and Clark end up coming into contact with more of those killer robots that we've seen all throughout the series. And hey, we learned this week that they're not just any killer robots, they're actually OMACs, which any comic fan can tell you is short for One Man Army Corps. Turns out these things were apparently Task Force X's original kill squad until they were outmoded by the group we see today. In the comics, these things are connected to Brother Eye and have a bad habit of going crazy in Skynet and trying to kill everybody, but they're also not always evil. There's a couple heroic OMACs, so make of that what you will. Also, after putting it off for way too long, Lois and Clark finally decide they need to have it out about last week. Lois, rightly so, didn't like being lied to, especially given her past with a pathological liar father, and her own journalistic pride that drives her to find the truth at any cost. But moreover than that, she says that what really stung about Clark lying to her is that she was really starting to fall for him, and that if they were going to form a romance, it couldn't be one built on the back of a lie. And let's face it, way too many comic book couples and romances are built on lies. And when you get older, you realize no relationship, romantic or otherwise, can survive being built on a lie for long, because once you start lying, you gotta tell another lie to cover that lie, and so on until eventually eventually the whole thing just snowballs. Clark says that for what it's worth, he's still figuring himself out and he's actually been more honest with Lois than he has any other person on Earth, a fact of which only gets more complicated and more hilarious when Jimmy drops the major bomb that he's always known that Clark was Superman, and I mean, yeah, he's lived with him for years apparently, he just wanted Clark to be able to tell him when he felt ready. For me, this also really recolors and recontextualizes Jimmy's conspiratorial thinking. Was he always like that, or was living with an alien what really pushed him over the edge, I wonder? Obviously, Clark wanted to tell his friends and loved ones, but he didn't, mainly out of fear that they would treat him differently when all he's ever wanted in his heart of hearts is to be normal. And you know what? That and the brain and Monsieur Mallah stuff from before really adds this kind of interesting new allegorical dimension to the Superman story wherein he has to very literally come out from a narrative standpoint, while also being deeply afraid of rejection. I feel that this is a very fresh and very modern updating of the classic Superman story, and just one of the many ways that My Adventures with Superman does things differently, and really justifies why this needed to be another Superman origin story because, well, they planned to do it differently. In the end, Superman, along with Lois, Jimmy, the Brain, and Mallah, must join forces in defeating the invading OMACs. It's a close call for sure, but one that gets easier when they activate the black hole once again, this time turning it into a proper wormhole capable of teleportation. The day is saved and the intern trio's relationship has never been stronger, but Superman has a lot more to think about. Whether it's the alien tech, Cadmus, Task Force X, or the General, all roads keep seeming to leading back to him as Superman. The Brain also leaves Superman with a hell of a warning, saying that he fears the General more than Waller or even Slade, saying that he's the type of man who would happily blot out the sun if he felt his country called upon him to do it, and if that isn't some sort of foreshadowing, I really don't know what is. And hey, speaking of the General, as this episode comes to an end, we realize just how far this guy really is willing to go to deal with the Superman problem, because he's sprung Dr. Ivo from bondage in exchange for using that big evil science brain to cook up a plan that may finally tear Superman from the sky itself. And so that was My Adventures with Mad Science, another very fun and compelling episode of this new series, an episode that once again shows that it's not afraid to change up the tone week to week and offer different stuff. I'm also enjoying that 6 episodes in, we now have a radically different status quo than most long-running Superman stories do, with Lois and Jimmy both knowing who young Superman is so early in his career. I'll be interested to see how they continue to grow these dynamics moving forward, because really, for all intents and purposes, we're in uncharted waters now, which is scary but also very exciting. The show also continues to make a real meal of DC Comics lore and not just the Superman related stuff. This episode, like the ones before it, made me feel like anything is on the table and anything is possible, and I can't wait to see what gets remixed or remastered next. And so until we meet again, everyone, this has been Cape Joel. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, why not subscribe to me here on YouTube or follow me on Twitter so you know when a brand new Superman video is dropping. Bye bye, everybody.